András, I told you that I invited with full intention, because today we are dealing mainly with urban transportation problem. Of course, all the time we have to keep in mind that urban setting cannot be, without the regional setting around and spatial development. So that is the town or city or the capital of respected country is not just floating somewhere out of the geographical setting and regional setting. So if we are considering the principles of sustainable urban mobility plan, I could name 10 different elements, and one is that we would like to deal with needs of all users. We would like to meet those basic mobility needs of all. On the other hand, the second one, that mobility and transport services by citizens, businesses and industry should be considered. So the demand is diverse and we have to have a balance, not only working for citizens, not only keeping our mind that business interest should be the most important, or industrial interest related to the transport, but we have to make a balance between. The third principle, what I named here, this is guiding the balanced development and better integration of different transport modes. So again, development should not be only related to demand, but also we have to balance that somehow, and we have to give the opportunity for different modes. Meeting the requirements of sustainability, balancing the needs for economic viability, social equity, health, and the environmental quality. That is the fourth principle. This is obvious. Then if we are speaking about the financial element, then effectiveness, cost effectiveness, and efficiency. Cost effectiveness, efficiency, and trying to optimize. That is the fifth named principle here. Then if we are speaking about transport infrastructure and services, we have to use the existing infrastructure, but also we have to develop those type of elements which are needed, but somehow again balancing and also keeping in our mind that we are working for, let's say, better environmental quality and for economic viability. Enhancing the attractiveness of the urban environment, quality of life and public health, that is the seventh, because in several cases, different strata of societies are leaving the urban settings, for example, downtown areas, because they would like to have a green area for their houses, they would like to have their yards, greenish place around themselves, and they don't want to be in the downtown, which is full of waste, which is dirty, which is not safe in any sense. Also, the prices of land are much higher inside than outskirts. So with that one, we have the sleeping places, that is well-known phenomena, as well as that we know that segregation is taking place of inhabitants. So again, trying to attract people in the downtown, in the urban area as well, and trying to encourage them to move back. Of course, you need for that compact cities, integrated cities, and connected places. Improving the traffic safety and security, that is also a very important principle. If that is not the case, the attractiveness, for example, of public transportation is not taking place. And in the same time, speaking about environmental elements, reducing air, noise pollution, greenhouse gas emission, and energy consumption. And finally, that is related to European settings, trans-European transport network and EU transport system, better overall performance of that could be also important principle. For that we need mobility offices at the urban places, which are dealing with these plans and developing these plans and integrating different information system for the traveler, for providing them with comprehensive information. So information, habits, as well as encouragement of inhabitants to use different modes of transportation are main elements of those mobility plans, and who should develop them? You need personnel and structure. That is why mobility offices are important. What is the difference between transport planning on traditional way and development and implementation of sustainable urban mobility plan? We could see the buzzwords on this chart: traffic flows or focus on the people. I mean, this is not completely different, but the seed of this element is there. So we are not only trying to focus and satisfy the traffic flows. Of course, people are sitting in those cars or in those public transportation vehicles, but focusing on people and not only on traffic flow. Main objective in the traditional way: capacity of the road network to handle again the traffic flows and development of infrastructure which is needed. That is the old way. The new way: accessibility and quality of life, economic development, human health, and environmental safety, social equality. Focus on the form, not on the content in the traditional way. Balanced development of all modes, what I was mentioning previously. Main focus on transport infrastructure, on the traditional transport planning, but integrated range of actions required to achieve effective solution. Spatial emphasis on urban planning solutions. So spatial development, regional development, but also in this new mode or new development and planning way, of course, we keep in our mind what happened already before we started with the development of and implementation of sustainable urban mobility plans. Planning for each area separately to legal instruments in force, but on the other hand, integrating and trying to find interlinks between each other and with legal instruments in force. So transport and urban planning, what I'm always emphasizing and mentioning, that transport problems cannot be solved with same techniques and tools what they were creating those problems. So the the transport problems are very highly related to urban development problems. And then about the timing, medium-term plans are part and of a long-term vision. So you have to have a long-term vision, and then short-term and medium-term plans are part of it. But not only focusing on short-term and medium-term plans. Let's say, let us reshuffle this bridge, and then we will have a better connection on two banks of the river. That is a short plan, maybe 1.5 years. On the other hand, if that is not within the long-term vision, then I'm not saying that is useless, but has lower value. Planning with the experts involved in the process, that is always important, but again, finding out the stakeholders in the process of planning, which planning should be transparent and participatory approach. Of course, I could, value highly participation, but on the other hand, to accomplish that is not easy. Also, someone could criticize, saying, okay, participation of inhabitants, fine, but how many of them? 10,000 in the settlement, which has 1.8 million inhabitants. Is that enough? On the other hand, someone could say, okay, but they know their own needs, but what about the common needs or requirements? And also, do we need experts for that? So I would like to have a balance between participation as well as with expert participation, but that is the reason why the stakeholder identification and also discussion with stakeholders and the back and forth process is very, very important. So here again, we don't have a magic tool. I don't want to go to the details, but first stage for designing sustainable urban mobility plans, obviously, to define the potential of successful plan, define what are the potential. Second, we have to know about the scope of the plan, as well as we have to develop process. How could we manage to have this plan? And the basic is definitely analyzing the mobility situation. I mean, if I'm dreaming about something in the future, even let's say that I would like to accomplish within 15, 20 years, but I don't know what is the existing situation, what is the background, what happened until now, what do I have in my hand, what is the situation, then how could I develop a right scope and also right process? And even if I do so, that will not lead me anywhere. So develop, finally, at this stage, we would like to have different scenarios for the long time period, and within that, for the middle term, as well as for short term. The second element, developing a common vision and setting priorities and measurable targets. Because if you don't have measurable targets, then again, how could you analyze later on what did you accomplish, what did you achieve? But in several cases, I mean, measurable targets to define that is awfully difficult. Like we try to internalize externalities. In several cases, that is almost not possible. Here, in several cases, some targets are not measurable, but we should try to develop those measurable targets. Develop effective packages of measures, and then the next stage, build monitoring as assessment into the plan, agree on the clean responsibilities and allocate budget. That is very important because you would like to adopt sustainable urban mobility plans, you would like to enforce, but then at final stage implementing the plan, you have to learn the lessons, you have to follow, you have to analyze, you have to monitor enforcement of your plans. Otherwise, you are not finding out what was the mistake. Again, stakeholder discussion is going on all the time. You cannot lose on that at all. So for that, we have to ensure proper management and communication plan. So this is into more details, the same process, what I was describing to you. And let me quickly summarize the barriers, because this sounds very nice and neat, and in the textbook that is fine and nice figure, but in real life we are facing these difficulties. So, for example, according to my experiences at the government, and this is not only Hungarian government, I was not member of any other government, obviously, but lots of meetings and lots of discussion with different respected colleagues from different parts of the world, at conferences, at bilateral discussions, multilateral discussions, and definitely they will, I mean, the ministries which were dealing with transportation were more influential, with higher budget, bigger political influence than, for example, ministries of environment. By the way, to tell you the truth also, last time Magdalena was mentioning that national state governments were several times asking for different projects and not the supranational level. I mean, Brussels was forcing on them those projects. This is true, but in several cases, the lobbies, which were ready to build up nice highways or train lanes, they were approaching national governments and using their influence on national level was introducing their needs and interest and projects, and then national government authorities or individuals were asking, let's say, Brussels to finance those projects. So the lobby interest behind is very important to consider, as well as also the cooperation, lack of cooperation between different national institutions, meaning ministries. If the Ministry of Environment is launching the project, then maybe the Ministry of Finance will not support it. Why? Just without any reasoning, because they say they know what is needed for the country, even on the field of environmental protection, and not the Ministry of Environment, for example. So those bad situation, no collaboration between different authorities could be serious barriers. weak collaboration between the areas of activity, transport, or urban development and land use. These are different authorities, different stakeholders. Or, for example, inadequate public support. For example, in Budapest, and András will speak about, the authorities are obliged to introduce a congestion fee, like happened in London, and András will speak about congestion fee possibly in London as well as in Stockholm, and about the experiences at different other parts of the world with fees. And Hungarian authorities are very much against introducing, for political reasons, because they expect if someone will introduce, for example, that congestion fee, to decrease utilization of individual transport mode, meaning cars. In that case, maybe the public or bigger part of the public will not vote for those political entities, parties, or authorities, or individuals, mayors, for example, of Budapest. But actually in London happened opposite, that Boris Johnson, who was the mayor of London before becoming prime minister, I don't like him as a prime minister, but to tell you the truth, I like him very much as a mayor of London, which is very funny on one hand. On the other hand, he was brave enough to introduce this congestion fee. András will speak about it.
It was Livingstone.
Oh, Livingstone, not
yes.
Boris Johnson, sorry. Livingstone, but he was also for the moving out from Europe, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So I liked what was done in London, in case of London, related to congestion fees. Also, could be a barrier, lack of information and data on how new programs, technologies are applied or should be applied. So those are the barriers of sustainable urban mobility plan development. András, maybe this is a right momentum to ask you to deal with your presentation. I will close mine. Okay.
Thank you very much. So I prepared a 1.5 hour presentation, but it seems that I will have less time, so I will try to do it quickly. But anyway, if you have any questions, just raise your hand at any time, or any comments. I would be happy to try to reply. So,
András, before you start, sorry guys, I forgot to ask, is there any question related to my introductory thoughts this time? On the chat board, Esther didn't find any, so I will be happy if we could continue, but if you have a comment or question, please raise your hand or just intervene. No? András, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I will speak first about our organization very quickly, then about some environmental problems caused by urban transport and the policies for attaining sustainable urban transport. So first about our organization. So I will go, you will receive this presentation afterwards, so I will just go through quickly. It was founded, our organization was founded 32 years ago, and it is a national association of now 39 Hungarian environmental NGOs. And we work on the state budget and taxation system, on the EU budget, now with Alexandra, and transport, energy, and urban management and urban development issues. We are a member organization of 7 European-wide NGOs. So we are doing campaigning, for example, like public transport, doing a lot of media work, and protecting also green areas in cities. And also we have good relations with trying to influence politicians but here we had the same opinion when Zoltán was the president of the Environmental Committee of the Hungarian Parliament.
You could see on the left-hand side on the wall the photo of my predecessor. Then you could see me as a chairman of that same committee and András next to us, and that was the committee non-partisan. So bipartisan meaning everyone was there from different political angles. And we were uniting within that session, during that session, dealing with urban transportation issues.
So we have been, today is not so much, but we have been organizing demonstration. This was for a bus lane, and now you can see that there is the bus lane on Erzsébet Bridge in Budapest. Conferences where
again, not only center-right political party, which is a governing party in this moment, but also Socialist Party was attending. So from the left wing, cooperation was taking place.
So we are making many studies, and so there's Elena from Russia. We just finished a study on transport in proposals for improving transport from an environmental perspective in St. Petersburg. We also had an intern from France. Even we have several interns, but you can see a study by one of our interns from France. So we have a lot of, mostly in Hungarian, but you can find it also in English and other languages, these studies on our website. So now about the environmental effects of urban transport. Well, one of the main, of course, is greenhouse gas emissions. You can see that in the whole world, transport is responsible for about 16% of greenhouse gas emissions. But this is, in fact, this share is much larger because you have to consider also the many activities which are necessary for transport, like road building or oil extraction or car manufacturing. So it is a very important, has a very important share in greenhouse gas emissions. And the other problem is that it is in fact the second largest emitting sector. And the other problem is that it is growing constantly. Many sectors are stagnating, or some are even decreasing their emissions, but transport is emissions are growing continuously. So this is an enormous challenge. And another environmental problem is air quality. Transport emits a lot of harmful substances. I will not go into details. I will just speak about the most important, which is considered the most important. This is particulate matter, and more than 400,000 people die prematurely in Europe because of this PM 2.5. But this is, what is this PM 2.5? And what is particulate matter? I don't know how much you have heard about this, but here you can see a picture of human hair, and you can see that the diameter of one human hair is about 7 times bigger than this PM10. It's a very small particle, and PM 2.5 is even much more smaller. It is, you can see on the picture that these are particles which are have a diameter of less than 2.5 micrometers. And if you look at the sources of in Europe of PM10 and PM 2.5, where this on the right part, this green and blue are from transport. You can see that but the most important part is from household heating, but the second biggest part is from transport. But the situation is even worse because there are not only PM 2.5, but there's also this so-called ultrafine particles, which are much smaller. They have 0.1 micrometer as the diameter, or even less. And if you look at the mass, if you take the same mass, in the same mass there are as of PM10, there are 64 particles of PM 2.5 have the same mass, and 1 million ultrafine particles have the same mass as this PM10. And the official measuring stations are measuring PM10 and PM 2.5. And why is this a problem? Because the smaller the particle, the more dangerous it is. Very small particles, these ultrafine particles, can enter into any part of the body, into the bloodstream, and then to the, for example, to the brain, and cause really very serious diseases. And this is not measured in the official measuring station. There is even no limit, health limit, and for ambient air quality. There are limits for emissions in some cases for the number of particles, very small particles, but no. And we are working on it in a project to help develop limits, health limits for this. And they also, here you can see that the very small ultrafine particles have a very large number, but very small mass. And the big particles have, of course, much bigger mass, and these are measured. And practically, you cannot know from the official measuring station how much is this small particle pollution. And the other, it is important to know that these small particles, from, after a certain time, condense into bigger particles. So it is especially dangerous to be near the source of these very, very small particles. We have this measuring device, this sensor, and here you can see that we measured by a busy road, Illés, Budapest, here 36,000 of these very small particles in 1 cubic centimeter, so in a very, very small volume. And you can also see the average size of these particles is much less even than 100. It is 43 nanometers. So this is a very dangerous place to be. This is from a Danish research from Copenhagen. We showed that really these bigger particles are from the background, from other sources in the city, and but the small particles are mainly from the nearby road traffic. So please keep away from the big traffic as much as possible. We made also measurements, similar measurements in the countryside. For example, here somebody is heating with some solid fuel, coal
or maybe plastic waste.
Maybe. And here in the near this place, we measured, I think, about 200,000 of these particles in 1 cubic centimeter, and we went away about 500 or 700 meters, and it was already about 3,000, so 100 times less. So this shows that please keep away from the sources of this pollution as much as possible. So now another big problem is air pollution, noise pollution, which generally people speak much less about this than air pollution, but it is also a very important source of environmental pollution, and it really affects also the health, and it can cause many diseases and even deaths, premature deaths. And this is mostly caused by transport. So the problem of waste, this is only one part of the waste, what to do with this obsolete or end-of-life vehicles. And maybe you have known more or less about these issues, but what is not so much known, how the transport influences personal relations, human relations. This is a very famous research was done in San Francisco, where the researchers examined how many friends and acquaintances people have in different streets. And in the lower part, you see that it is a street with heavy traffic, and generally people have relatively few friends and few acquaintances. Everyone stays at home or tries to go away from this place. And on the top, you can see that where there is a light traffic, not many cars, trucks, they have a lot more friends and a lot more acquaintances, and much more happy. And this during now, especially in the last months during this this pandemic, there have been a lot of articles on how this loneliness affects the health of people, the mental health and then the physical health. So it is very important that people have good human relations.
So before you continue, András, let me enter here for 3 comments. I already mentioned the new idea, which is not that very new, but compact city, integrated city, and connected city. What does it mean? I have to bring my daughter for a fencing training, and we could do that 15 to 20 minutes walking to the place from our apartment, or by public transportation, maybe 10 minutes, or walking and public transportation 10 minutes, or by car, which is maybe 20-30 minutes, because we are queuing up. But if I would like to go to my workplace from my apartment, that is walking 15 to 20 minutes, by public transportation maybe 10 minutes, walking to the station and joining the tram. If I would like to shop nearby, not only I could buy vegetables, but clothing, I could ask for different services to fix my main entrance if that is broken. If I would like to go to the theater, then the theater is 5 minutes far from me, or maybe 15 again minutes far from me. If I would like to walk to nice area where is a pedestrian walk and bank of the Danube, that is maybe 10 minutes by walking on feet. So again, services are all around. I'm not going to shop at shopping malls almost at all. I don't need for that car. I am not traveling 40 minutes to shopping mall and then to buy for 2 months whatever is needed. Already my wife is quarreling with me not to buy too much and keep in the refrigerator, because certain amount of cheese we are throwing out because that is rotting or having nice mildew on top of it. I cut out the mildew and eat the rest of the cheese. But anyway, and what I'm trying to say, this is not only in my case, but organizing integrated way, on compact way, that workplaces are there, if that is possible. What type of workplace? Of course, that is not a smelter company with 10,000 employees working. That is somewhere else. But different third sector working place are there, which is giving opportunity that you need additional useless transportation. You don't have to fulfill the useless transportation needs. And please don't say that is only me and in downtown of Budapest, but that could happen in San Francisco at different places. I mean, in San Francisco area, in Los Angeles, at different part of Los Angeles, or in Moscow, at different part of Moscow, and then I could name different places all around the world, maybe Bogota as well. So what is important to develop the urban, to plan and to develop with these three different elements: compact, integrated, and connected. 15-20 minutes walking distance, and that is there with the light traffic on the upper part of the slide. András, before you continue, let me ask nice colleagues, is there any question or comment on your behalf? If not, then let's have 5 minutes more and then we will have a break.
Okay. Oh, the next problem, also people do not speak much about this, but this is even more dangerous than air pollution. I told you that there are about 400,000 premature deaths because of the PM 2.5 pollutions, but there are 600,000 premature deaths each year because of physical inactivity. And how does transport relate to this? Well, first of all, many people got used to take a car and drive a car, and or they take the children by car to school and any other place, so they move much less. This is one problem, and the other is that streets became very unpleasant because of the noise, because of the big traffic, because of air pollution. So people prefer to stay at home and not to move. So this is an enormous problem, which is related all around the world, which should be resolved. So there should be more physical activity. Accidents, also an enormous problem. I will not go into details. And also, we do not speak much about that, but many millions of animals, or even worldwide billions of animals, are being killed by transport. So, land use. Transport occupies a lot of land, both directly and also indirectly. For example, along these streets, people don't like to walk and even don't like to live there because of the all the noise and air pollution caused by traffic. So, and this is also a problem. For example,
Mohammed raised his hand.
Yes.
Mohammed, your turn.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the Massacre of Wildlife. There was a study that I came across last year about Germany and how the number of like flying animals, so mostly it's insects, flying insects that have been killed by public transport has been so significant that Germany is considering that there was calling this an insecticide, because, well, the evidence that they showed was if you drove on a highway in the countryside in Germany 20 years ago, you're most likely going to hit a few flies on your windshield. But this never happens anymore. And so they went out and tried to investigate this, and they found that more than 50% of the insect population of Germany has most likely either died or migrated. And that's just, one of the shocking figures that we don't think about. Mostly cats and dogs are what we think about when they get killed by cars on the street, but it's not only them.
Yes, thank you. Excellent example. And this is the case.
Yes, I remember when I was a child and somebody took me by car on the countryside. The window after a 50 even 20 kilometers was full of dead insects, and now it is. But insects are not only killed by traffic, but also by intensive chemical agriculture and so on. But that's another issue.
To tell you the truth, András never uses cars. So he came today here not with public transportation, but with his electric bicycle?
Pedelec, which is not fully electric. It means that I have to pedal a lot. It just sometimes I had a little help when I was going up here like this.
Yeah, and he doesn't live in the city center.
And I live 12 kilometers from here in a hilly place, so it is not so easy to come here by bike.
And he brought his suit and he changed his suit because he was biking in different other costume. Very nice of him.
So I'm showing this picture because I lived here in this near this place as a child, and when you see all these cars parking, there were 4 rows of very beautiful trees and flowers, roses in the middle of the street, and it's characteristic for many places in Budapest and also for many other cities. So, and why trees and why plants are so important? Well, for several reasons. I will just mention one thing. This is temperature. As we have climate change and more days with extreme heat, with heat waves, this is really extremely important to have the cooling effect of trees. You can see that in an area which is covered by trees, there is see the difference between another area where there are no trees but asphalt and cars, that the surface temperature and the air temperature, the difference between these two areas, the temperature difference between these two areas can be 40 degrees centigrade, 30 and 70. So, and this is really for many people, this is a question of life and death. Just this figure from in the years 2000 from Budapest, when we had heat waves, the number of deaths increased by 15 to 30%. So trees are really saving life. And there are also a lot of studies showing that if you live in a place where there are trees around, generally people are much more healthy than those people who live in places where there are no trees.
Okay, let us stop here.
Just one.
Okay, one slide. Okay.
Just a few, I finish this part. So urban sprawl is also made very much possible by the transport. And now I will.
Let us stop and have 10 minutes break, and we will come back 4:45. Is there any comment or question? If not, then 4:45. Thank you, András.
During our more than 30 years of activity, we came across many arguments how to improve transport, how to make it better, and many of these really arguments are really false. If these proposed measures would be implemented, then transport problems would not improve, even they would become much more worse. Now I will tell you some of these false solutions which you might hear. First of all, we can hear very often that the government must spend more money for road transport, that car users are overtaxed, we should reduce the taxes on cars and so on. So what I'm showing here, this is a website of the European Commission, and they published a study about 2 years ago on the transport's external costs. So what are these costs? Well, the researchers analyzed how much do the users of transport, here you can see road transport, and surface transport, let's say, how many taxes and charges they pay, and how much revenue the government gets from these taxes and charges. Then they also looked at how much the government spends on infrastructure, roads, and so on. And then they also looked at the costs of accidents, congestion, air pollution, climate change, noise, and the where to tank. This means the production of oil, of car manufacturing, and so on, and also the habitat damage to ecosystem. And they came to the conclusion, for example, here is a figure for road transport, that in no country in the EU, Switzerland, Norway, the US, and Canada, and Japan, so in none of these countries do the users of road transport cover the full costs of all the costs they cause. For example, in Hungary, both for passenger, it means cars, and for trucks,
I'm sorry, it seems like it's not. It
No,
is.
like he says that he wants to get the PPT
Oh, the whole
after.
PPT. Sorry,
Yeah.
I thought it's not shared.
so in Hungary, the road
Sorry.
users pay only about one-third, about one-third of the cost they cause. So this is an enormous problem, because this means that demand for road transport, for cars and trucks, and and use of the cars and trucks is much greater than it would be if there would be the prices which reflect the real costs. So demand is extremely great because of these artificially low prices. So another false solution, which we often hear, that it is necessary to build new roads and widen existing ones, then we can solve the transport problems. I tell you a few examples. One was about the ring road M0, for which our organization fought that it should be built because trucks were passing through the central part of Budapest. And well, it was promised that, okay, the government promised that we will build the road, and then the heavy trucks will disappear from this road, and there will be no more congestion. But yes, really, the trucks disappeared, which was very good, and we were happy about it. But what do you think? How much time passed before there was started to be congestion? Not by trucks, but how much time was necessary to be this road to be filled by cars? What do you think? Any?
I think that it's a very interesting problem, especially when cities grow at an exponential rate. And so cities have to think fast on their feet because of this congestion problem and change the face of the city. I don't believe not building new roads is a solution, but I would be very open to hear what kind of policy would work in that case, because I think it's a problem that a lot of cities face, yeah.
I'm sure that András will speak about solutions,
yes,
but let me try to answer your question, because you were not asking how many hours or days, you were asking what time was needed to have again a congestion or problem.
Yes.
5 years?
24 hours.
No, yes, or somebody said
5 years.
5 years, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, we had the same congestion without trucks, but with cars. So this is a figure from two figures from the USA, and during the last decades, a lot of new roads were built billions of dollars were spent on this to reduce congestion. And what happened? Congestion increased constantly. More roads, more congestion. And there was a big research on this topic, and which came to the conclusion that widening roads to ease congestion is like trying to cure obesity by loosening your belt. So this is not a solution. It is the same with parking places. If you build new parking places, more cars will come to the city center. And similar situation with park and ride parking places. This is a big park and ride parking place for 1,500 cars in, maybe you know, this near Kelenföldi pályaudvar in Budapest. And it was built to reduce congestion on the main road leading into Budapest. And it was a very beautiful green area, so the nearby residents protested a lot, but anyway, this was built. And we do not see any reduction in congestion or the number of cars going on this road, and we destroyed this nice green area.
But because Philomena was arguing on the new development on certain way, and I understood her, but here someone could also argue, and let me be advocate of that person, that I mean, doesn't matter that you have now park and ride place, because the number of sold new cars or used cars is increasing.
Yes,
so
that's also a problem. Yes, you build.
Because let's say that I ban import of any car to Hungary, and from now on, no one could import new one, old one, this age, whatever. Then maybe these elements of the infrastructure development could decrease a little bit. I have doubts, and of course I cannot manage that ban because they will kill me immediately.
Well, I am not sure about that, but that's another issue. But yeah, and I am not sure that whether if there would be a ban on selling more cars, that the situation wouldn't be same. I just showed the example that you know, within 2 weeks, not many cars, new cars were bought, and anyway it was filled. But you are partly right, because each year, for the last 6 years, the number of cars in Budapest and its surroundings increased by 100,000, more than 100,000, you know, and this 1,500 parking places and the destruction of isn't worth to destroy the green areas.
I think what András wanted to say, that if there will be less parking places, then maybe less people would consider buying the car. Because if there is no parking place, then the person say, okay, I wouldn't buy a car, I would rather go by public transport because I don't have the place to park, or the parking is too expensive. I would rather save money for the car and go by public transport or by bicycle or with blah blah car or something like that.
But then this is the question of developed north and poor south on different way. Me who is rich, I could say, I mean, I already bought. All those who are coming later on, then they are not able to buy because there is no parking space. So then I could bring the justice question to it. I mean, justice on that sense that someone who woke up earlier, quote unquote, woke up earlier, could have managed, and from now on, because the space is limited, me, I cannot. I'm being a devil's advocate.
So first of all, no, rich people can always buy more of anything than poor people. You know, you can change. This is a social question. Of course, you can reduce this by taxation and so on. But rich people will also always buy more cars, and they will buy cars, and poor people will not. That's one thing. But the present situation is really is subsidizing the rich. If you don't make the people pay the costs of what they cause, the prices of the of car use does not include all costs. It means these costs are borne by the whole society. So
This is true.
So
This is true.
and the richer you are, the more subsidy you receive, because then you have a bigger car and you travel more and so on. We made calculations. We made, there is this company tax, company cars, and we made calculations how much which have very low taxation, and we made calculations. And rich people who have company cars receive a subsidy because of they have company cars of, let's say, 2 million forints a year. And poor people
they don't have a company car.
They don't have a car and don't have a car, they don't receive. So this is a really
Unjust,
very unjust. So there is a, of course, we also, when we say that, take away some lanes, we always receive that the answer that when congestion will increase. But there is also a groundbreaking study in which the researchers analyzed the results of in about 100 cities where roads were closed or roads were narrowed maybe for reconstruction or for earthquake or any reason, and they found that in almost all cases the traffic increased not only on the road which was closed or where a lane was taken away, but in the whole big area. So if you decrease road space, there will be generally less traffic. So often, they say that, well, cars must move freely. Let's put the pedestrians and cyclists under the roads or over the roads. This is also only increasing car traffic and making life for pedestrians and life and cyclists miserable. So you shouldn't do that. We also hear that intelligent transport system will solve can solve or help solve the problems of congestion. Well, intelligent transport systems can be used to reduce environmental pollution, but it might also increase. For example, now you see here, this is from the Facebook page of local environmental group in Budapest, where they are complaining that because all the drivers have this software in their smartphones which shows where there is congestion, and so they see on the main road there is congestion, so they lose the small roads, and to evade this congestion, traffic is diverted, so now congestion is everywhere. So maybe intelligent transport system can be good if you use them intelligently, but be careful. So we had also this argument that ticket prices must be raised to have more revenues for public transport. So we analyzed already many years ago whether this is true, and we found that during 15 years, the ticket prices of Budapest Public Transport Company were raised by 70%, and the revenues of the company increased only by 7%, and they lost a lot of passengers. So this is also not a solution. So what are the real solutions? First of all, you must decide what you want to achieve. About this, Zoltán already talked, so that we also prepared, in fact, with the help of a French intern, proposals, what should be measured, what indicators we have, and of course there should be annual targets so that you can measure each year, how much progress you did, and if you did not achieve what was necessary, then to make the necessary
Yes, this
changes.
is what I was mentioning.
Yes. So how to make the users pay the prices they should. We think that one of the most efficient system is would be urban road pricing. We made a detailed proposals about this. You can read it on our website. So, but this is not the same kind of road pricing, which is in several cities. For example, also in Budapest, the municipality earlier proposed that there should be a zone, and if
and the congestion fee.
Yes, and the fee, and if a car enters the zone, then a fee should be paid. This is really not a good solution. This was in London, but it had also a lot of problems. Congestion was reduced in this central, and air pollution was reduced in this very, very small central area, but in all other places it increased, especially around this congestion zone, so it's not a good solution. So what we proposed is an urban road pricing system, which is first based on the distance traveled by the vehicle, the environmental category of the vehicle, it means how much it emits, harmful substances, the time of the travel. You know, you shouldn't pay the same during the night than during the day. The road on which vehicle moves, you know, if it moves on a very congested road, of course, it should be higher, and the weight of the vehicle. So here I have a comparison of the London type congestion charge and the urban road pricing, which is urban road pricing, which is proposed by us. And in fact, there was a plan to introduce such a road pricing, which we proposed in Singapore this year, but because of the pandemic, it is so it wasn't yet introduced, but there is a plan. And also in several other cities, in Brussels and in London, there are plans to introduce such a system.
Mohammed was saying that in Dubai, if I read correctly, there is a possibility they were introducing in Dubai similar pricing like you are mentioning. But previously you were criticizing to a certain extent smart devices, what I agree and I accept. On the other hand, to reach your goals,
yes,
also you need smart technology
yes,
and devices.
I say that this intelligent transport system can be, you know, everything can be used
for bad
things. You know, with a knife you can cut this bread
or kill the person.
You know, it depends. It's not the fault of the knife. So I have very little time, so I will not go into these details.
Of course, let me emphasize again that you will have from Esther the PowerPoint presentation. We will send you afterwards.
I think you should press stop control there.
Oh, okay.
Or like this.
So another method is raising parking fees. And why? Because public space is extremely valuable, especially in city and even more in city center. So what is public and what is very expensive, we shouldn't give for free or for a low price, because then demand will be always much larger than supply. So there will be much more cars and there will be many as I already said, many places will be turned over to parking. So here is an example from France, from Paris, what they could achieve. But first of all, they reduced the number of parking spaces substantially, and also they reduced the number of free parking spaces. It is the lower and the middle figure. And what was the result? The vehicle kilometers traveled also substantially decreased. So just by this measure, they could decrease the movement of cars. So, but it was also mentioned by Zoltán that, of course, the people would not like these measures, and so it is very difficult to introduce this politically. Well, it is not difficult if you have make the right system and you have the political will. There are studies from different countries where where it was they made such a reform, and in some cases it was unsuccessful, and in some cases it was very successful. There was good examples from Indonesia, from Ghana, and Iran. I will speak a little bit. I will speak in detail about this situation, what happened in Iran. So before 2010, there was $60 billion of subsidy each year on fuel. But then the government decided that it will eliminate this subsidy. And so in the year 2010, they stopped subsidizing fuel, and the fuel prices increased four times. So, but there was no reward, and even people were very happy about it. And why? Because the revenue was distributed each month to 80% of the population. Only the richest 20% didn't get this subsidy, but they really didn't care because they were rich, and the fuel costs were not a big cost in their budget. And also public institutions received compensation, and companies. So then what happened? Fuel consumption decreased by 20%, and everyone was really happy, and congestion decreased, and air pollution decreased. And what was also very important, that they spent a lot of effort on raising public awareness, communicating about the plans, so that people understood that this is a good move.
I wanted to be nasty, saying that is Iran, questionable democracy, but you are right, the main element here, that the whole revenue was redistributed each month to 80% of the population. Why I am pointing out? Because next week our friend from Switzerland, Ueli Barmer, will speak something similar. And I bring the attention of our colleagues listening to us that is Switzerland, here Iran, and they were doing something similar, redistributing to those people, and that is why they accepted.
Just a minute. First, I would like to answer to Zoltán. Yes, Iran is not so democratic, so to say, but maybe you think that you agree that Canada is quite democratic. Okay, they introduced last year the same system, and it works. So.
Okay, this is the answer.
Yes.
What was the question? Because I don't see. Esther, do you see? Philomena, please.
Your microphone, please. Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
My question was about the whole revenue. What do you mean by that? Was the revenue of each individual redistributed? I didn't get, were the revenue of the oil companies? What?
Oh, no. It was the state. The state subsidized. Well, it was really not the revenue, but it was the money saved, because they did not subsidize anymore. So yes, it's not really a revenue, but a
subsidy, the sum of subsidy per year,
which they did not pay to subsidize. In fact, in the budget, it is like a revenue, but in fact it's saving the money.
Maybe it's worth mentioning the form of what they were distributing money to people, that they were not just giving money to people, but by decreasing the taxation or...
No, they just gave money to the people. They directly pay. I think it was for everybody received, every person, I think $40, if I remember correctly. Yes?
What period of time did that last? Is it still lasting, or was it a?
I am not sure. I think it is still
lasting.
Still lasting, but for many years it happened.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have to finish. Let me ask András, is it a special slide of his presentation what he would like to show?
Yes.
Because maybe we could go to that slide.
Well. Yes. So this is the sustainable mobility plan. We should include all these issues about which I talked. And here in English, there is well, it's not only about Budapest, but about Hungary, but most of these recommendations or most of these solutions are described in more detail here in this study. And one more thing I would like to say to tell you, this is about research project by economists and Siemens about European Green City, and where they had different rankings. And one of the most interesting things that the more, even with cities similar economic development, the more there was, the stronger there was a civil society, more people were active in environmental movement and so on, generally in civil movements, the better was the environment. So it is, and you know, it is understandable because when there is a big pressure on the politicians, they will take the necessary measures. So I am asking you, could you help making your city more livable by promoting sustainable transport? If yes, then we would be happy to have you as a volunteer or intern at our organization. And thank you, and here are my contacts.
Okay, thank you very much, András, for the presentation. Is there any question or comment? Of course, I am re-emphasizing that you will get, Esther will send to all of you, and even to those who are not participating in this moment, they are not with us. Mohammed, please.
I hoped also hear from others in the class, but so I was thinking when I was looking at all these real solutions that you offer, that they're not very different from the false solutions. There is subtle changes. So I'm curious as to the subtleties, for example, when it comes to changing parking laws and parking regulations, and how these changes do enact real change on the ground. And I wanted to also comment on what happened in Dubai with the SALIC system, where they built these tolls. They look like gates, and they're above the road. And you put a sticker on the front shield of your car, the windshield of your car, and it counts it, and it does take into account all these regulations or conditions that you placed. But in Dubai, car consumption is still the main form of transport, and that's because there is a bigger structural problem, which is that in the UAE. There is great reliance on cars because the country is an oil exporter. And we discussed this in previous classes, where oil exporting countries, they prefer to support the sale of vehicles and other forms of transport that use oil, because they make a lot of money from that. So how do you deal with this higher structural problem when it comes to transportation?
You know, that's the main problem. That's why we cannot change. we have all these good proposals, and these are not only our proposals. Transport experts have been saying that already for a long time. But for example, in Hungary, we have 4 big car companies and big companies which are interested in road building, and they have much more power than we do. So how do you solve this? I don't know how to solve this problem. I mean, if the whole system will collapse, it will solve the problem, but it is not really a good solution.
But already the whole system collapsed. This is the pandemic or outcome of the pandemic. Or, for example, that there is a political change, that those will gain the power who share ideas like we. If he will be the prime minister, I will be the minister of environment. You can imagine that we will do some out of these. But how could we manage to become, politically speaking, the leaders in this country? Those who are there, they are also humans and managed somehow. So we have to develop political party. We have to find money from outside or inside. We have to campaign. We have to deal not only with these questions, but different other education, health, whatsoever. And finally, if we gain the power. If not, again, we tried our best, we failed. And then 40 years later, there will be changes. Like Stone Age is not over because there is no any more stone. There are stones, but there are several changes. For example, mental changes, or different humans will be in the position to make decisions. But you have to fight for it. No perfect solutions. And actually, which is very funny, that already what we are proposing, and this is not only András, international experts all around the world dealing with these issues, maybe they are saying for the last 30 years, 3 decades. But then that is why even some of intellectuals were asking, how come that no changes are taking place? This is the reason. So everything continues on the previous way, but that is not increasing the possibility of new solutions, but bringing us to the collapse of the society. I mean, that is why we are all concerned, and we are trying to do our best. And again, you don't have to be a prime minister to make changes on your own level, but please, if you are capable or it will happen, go for it and do it. You are better than the other one. I'm sure. Now, having only you, I could have a government in any country. With your age, with your knowledge, already, any government.
There were some structural changes since the pandemic, actually, in the Gulf. They agreed through the Gulf Cooperation Council to build a railway network. This happened only last month. So I guess the pandemic did cause some structural changes, but yes. I doubt that it will be enough. There has to be more.
It will not be enough, but changes are there. There are changes. No one wanted to have this. Everyone was going to continue with old practices, common practices, but no way. No way. Is there any other question or comment? If not, on your behalf, what is going to happen, and you had that experience last time, because the previous colleague Tamás got the nice book from us. I'm just representing you guys. András, have this nice book, and I wish you all the best, and thank you very much for coming and for the presentation. Thank you very much. So let us have 20 minutes break, and we will continue 20 to 6 o'clock. Thank you, guys.
Igen, szóval 17 éves.
Hi guys. Now I don't need any more, Peter. If you would like to have your mask, that is fine with you. I don't need. I was wearing the mask because András was very keen about it, even not shaking hands.
Yeah.
But I would not like to have this mask right now. I hope that everyone is with us. And now I will be very strict, I mean, counting the time as well as keeping the right order to have the breaks. At 7 o'clock we will finish punctually. And the reason is that I would like to give a ride to Esther and to Peter before 8 o'clock the curfew will start.
To reach
and
home.
I have to reach also
Until 8 o'clock.
home. Now we have Péter Mészáros, who is a professor, already got retired, but still active and teaching at Technical University of Budapest, dealing with transportation issues. And for the first 20 minutes, I will ask him to deal with urban issues. But he was mentioning to me that according to our previous discussion, he made, I mean, 3 times 20 minutes blocks. And first 20 minutes he would like to spend dealing with externalities as well as on impacts of transport on nature and the environment. But I warned him and I told him that to a certain extent we should not repeat ourselves, not only because András was previously speaking about these issues nicely, but I think will be very useful if we glance through for the first 20 minutes on his slides, and then we will have 10-15 minutes break, and then we continue with urban questions, for example, parking and discussion related to those elements and topics what you raised as well. And finally, the last block today will be about freight transport related environmental issues. And this will be a good introductory for next week, when for the 2 sessions next week, for 2 classes, we will have Mr. Balmer from Switzerland, who was a division chief of the transportation ministry over there. Even Peter knows him.
Yeah.
He is a great internationally recognized expert. Peter is with us. This PowerPoint presentation by Esther will be sent to you after the class.
It's already uploaded, yeah.
Already uploaded, fine. And if you would like to get in touch with Peter later on, I mean afterwards, that is also possible. So the first 15 minutes are yours. And just I would like to ask you not to spend too much time on your first block.
Yeah. So the mask is already not necessary.
No.
Thank you. Thank you once again the invitation. Everybody is here, more or less, from the group.
Yes, I think so. Elena is
Some
there.
microphones are not on, but no problem. So I prepared, as Zoltán mentioned, 3 blocks. The first, the 0 block is a short prologue regarding the emission control or emission problems or efficiency problems of electric cars. This is a recent news or statistics from the European agency or European Transport and Environment, which is a umbrella organization. So here the crucial question is, what is the source of energy and what about the production of electric cars? Here, this is the worst case issue, the worst case scenario regarding car production, regarding battery production. As you see, battery production in China, car production in the European Union, and the crucial question is the source of energy. Here we can see the fuel electricity production from Poland. you know, the Polish situation regarding power plants. So even in this case, the electric cars emit 22% less CO2 globally. The best case scenario comes mainly from Sweden or from the European Union, but mainly in Sweden because of the electric energy production in Sweden, electricity production. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I think so. Yes, Mohammed is there. Elena is also
so the
showing.
electric energy production structure and situation in Sweden is entirely different, and also the battery production conditions and production efficiency, especially regarding CO2 and emission or energy need regarding. So this is a current issue because of the electric car situation is still growing in Europe, although some countries, the electric cars have a strong role or strong potential. So it was only a short introduction. And now this is the content Zoltán mentioned. So in the first block, we would be dealing with the impacts, transport environmental impacts. But as I heard, András has already been dealing with the issue mainly, so only some elements or some slides will be commented or mentioned. In the second block, we will deal with the demand management issues. Demand management means here the issues of external costs, paying as possible the external costs, and management of the urban, especially the urban transport demands, practically parking and urban road charging issues. So this is I think it's a current case in also in Europe and Hungary, or not only in Europe, but I think in overseas countries. And in the third block, as Zoltán mentioned, the freight transport conflicts, freight transport impacts will be managed and shortly discussed.
I just would like to mention that several weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, we sent to you some video. Of course, that could be also useful later on, or maybe already you watched those videos, which are related to some infrastructure development, which was detrimental in Bulgaria or in Poland or in different other countries to the nature.
Europe, yeah, the Trans-European network, TEN-T, Trans-European Transport Network.
Maybe during that block,
yeah.
Maybe you could speak also about the Trans-European network to a certain extent. Tamás Fleischer was speaking about historical part as well as what is happening nowadays. Brand new plan was introduced by Tamás, but because you were also member of Hungarian Parliament several years ago, but still dealing with these questions, maybe your experiences could be also useful. But not too much about it, because we have colleagues who are not from European continent. In that case, maybe examples what you could share with us from different other parts of the world could be also useful.
Welcome back, Philomene and also Mohammed.
No, all of them are there, just they didn't turn on their cameras.
Elena is also here.
Yes, they are there.
Let's go. So in the first block, I made a survey on the environmental impacts of transport, but in the previous section, you have already discussed these issues, although this could be a different approach regarding András' former presentations. 3 levels of transport impacts: local level, as usual, transport impacts, transport growth, emissions, local emission loads, public health elements, and the noise.
So that is a local level.
Local level. Regional level, more. On regional level, there are more impacts from the point of view of biological diversity, as before we mentioned before, at infrastructure development, transport infrastructure development, opening up, crossing of former natural areas, plus the emission problems, emission gases of transport on regional level. On global level, of course, we should emphasize, or we should speak the greenhouse gas emissions, the CO2 and other greenhouse gas contributors of transport, which is still strongly depends on the energy use, local energy use and global energy use, plus some other elements like NOx, nitrogen oxides, can also have certain impacts on global level, and the globalization itself, the globalization of transport, including not only greenhouse gases but also hydrocarbon impacts, hydrocarbon emissions. This is again on the European Union, EU 27, including the CO2 emission in the last 30 years. And as you see, this is not only European-oriented scenario or future, that we have two directions or two opportunities. One is the existing measures, more or less stagnating on the field of CO2 emissions, and one is the scenario or projection with additional measures. Additional measures means more or less strong demand management, pricing, technical introduction of more developed technical solutions on the field of emission control, on the field of energy use. Efficiency is an important question, generally, and on the field of transport especially. The use of energy, use of resources, use of natural resources, because we need, of course, not only energy, but different other resources for the production, for the infrastructure development, maintenance, operation of the network. And here, in this respect, it's really important the life cycle effects of transport, including background emissions, background processes, like the fuel sector, production of fuel, the character of fuel. The vehicle industry itself has a strong impact on energy use and emissions.
And that is what you call background.
Yeah, background energy sector, fuel sector, vehicle industry, operation of vehicles, maintenance of vehicles, construction and operation of infrastructure. Some figures on this issue, including this. So there are interesting elements that we should speak not only on vehicle operation and manufacture and maintenance, but also fuel production. And the parking effects here means the space, parking space, use of parking space, and operation and the construction of parking spaces. Visiting. Yeah. Okay, so these are the so-called background elements and the direct elements, like the vehicle operation. The first component is the emission and energy use of a vehicle when we are driving. Noise is getting more and more important regarding the impacts. comparing to other elements like the gases, the emission gases. So from the point of view of public health, mental health, the noise control is getting more and more serious problems. Even if we speak about electric cars, of course, electric cars have much less noise emission, but still the general impacts of transport from the point of view of noise still have a strong general impact on urban and suburban.
What do you think? Which type of investments should decrease the noise level? Let's say on local or urban or regional level. I had once opportunity to give an interview next to the highway, and that was for me shocking that even into the camera and to microphone I was not able to speak because the noise was that loud. Yeah. So what do you think, which policies or which investments should take place to decrease the noise? András was also speaking about noise related problems like diseases whatsoever, but solutions, what could be the solution? Philomena?
Technical measures, operational measures.
Magdalena is there.
Regulation.
Wait. Yeah. Magdalena is there.
Magdalena.
Yeah, so I think that technical measures such as like walls next to the highway or next to the railway would be good already, but then also maybe within the city there could be some sort of like traffic regulation during the night, for example, forbidding trucks to drive through the city by night. So this could also be a policy.
Yes, restrictions to those trucks and also maybe the speed limits at certain areas, but also the construction of tires, and brakes could also decrease, not speaking about the engine, development. So those could be all elements. Elena?
Yeah.
And also probably like trees planting, because as far as I know, trees and like different absorbents, they can absorb this noise, like these voices. So we can just plant trees not only as this helping with this green gases emission, but also with like reducing this noise pollution too.
Definitely, yes, you are right. And mainly at those places where is enough space for tree development, and also if that is those type of trees which doesn't have too deep roots or will not grow too high. On one hand, will be very useful to have a high trees, but immediately they will not grow immediately that high. But at the same time, also the space is needed for those trees. Excellent. And now Magdalena was mentioning technical solutions as well as you, and also policies, like Magdalena told about restrictions to the transportation of goods at certain time of the day, mornings or evenings. And I could mention also subsidies by government to change the windows of the apartment buildings and also houses nearby. Isolation, not only to make more efficient, the cooling and heating of the houses, but to reduce the noise. So that could be also the government, project, a large scale at certain places all around the city, which are jammed and huge traffic is going on there.
But the most efficient solution is not to produce noise. So the
prevention.
So in this respect, the electrification is important. Electrification of road transport, electrification of rail transport, and at rail transport, of course, we have much more opportunities for the prevention of noise impacts.
Okay.
Now we should finish the
Yes,
first block.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, we should stop
So
here
the other
and for
elements-
10 minutes.
The other elements, I suppose you have already seen by András before. Maybe this block or this slide would be interesting as a positive, as an additional element. Okay, so let's have a short break.
Let's have a 10 minutes break. We will come back at 6:10.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hát ez maradt ki, amit mondom. So everybody is sitting at home or at different places?
Magdalena is in Austria, Julie in Austria, Philomena in Paris, Elena in Vienna, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
Mohammed, I believe in Vienna, or maybe not.
Yeah,
Where are you, Mohammed?
Jordan.
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 Jordan, okay. Vasundhara was, she's in Vienna right now, finally arrived on the end of December. And we have a colleague from Eden from Chicago, and she's in Chicago. I mean, 6 hours difference, meaning noon. So that is now noon in Chicago, or 11 o'clock.
Chicago is still 6 hours.
6 or 7 hours difference, 6 I believe. Okay, why don't we start, Peter, with this last slide of yours, and then you have 20 minutes to go. We will have a break, last one at 6:30.
One slide from the previous section, what I wanted to emphasize, this disturbance of natural environmental landscape in connection with transport infrastructure development and maintenance. So this is an important element. Zoltán mentioned your videos from the early periods of the transport infrastructure developments in Central Eastern Europe. So the separation barrier effects, the deterioration of landscape.
Let me ask you, what does it mean, separation and barrier effects? Let me be the devil's advocate.
Separation and barrier from the point of view of ecosystems and living spaces, and also from a certain point of the society, so from human point of view. But here we, first of all, we
But
speak
why is
about
that important? Julie, what do you think? I mean, separation and barrier effects, why is that a problem? Who cares about deer's,
Free
sexual life and walking from one direction to the other? I mean, I need here the highway and that's it.
Yes, but this is environmental protection.
Julie, you please unmute.
I think that the existence of the transportation separates because it connects us. I mean, it could be a paradox. It connects us, the people at this, but then again, since we are in this compact city, so it sort of separates us from the environment. So the mindset is like only in the city, and the thinking is since we are living in the city, we sometimes forget that there is like the environment is just out there. I'm not sure.
Yes, I agree. But and that is also the answer to my question, that we have to care, we have to consider other living creatures and their space, which is needed for living, for further development, for increasing the number of the population, and so on and so forth. So I agree, but how could we, I mean, in that case, we have to choose between having a highway or not having a highway there. What could be the solution? How could we decrease the problem of barrier effect? because highway is like a Chinese wall there. I mean, who are on one side cannot cross to the other, otherwise we will see those photos, and that is really happening, killing those animals which are crossing. So what do you think? What could be the solution? Elena?
I think we need to somehow avoid this area of natural forests, of protected areas, protected parks, just to build highways, because we cannot not to build like some transport means, but we need to avoid this area of massive biodiversity level somehow, and
So
also through building these corridors also to allow creatures to cross these highways, for example, like building the highways above on the road, and then to allow creatures, just animals, to cross under the highway.
Yes, so Philomena, is this the corridor what you were writing about?
I mean, yeah, for yes, kind of that. Like between forests, you always need corridors for biodiversity to be able to go from one place to another. But I also mean for human spaces as well. If you create, you know, a concrete jungle, you want spaces of interactions and ways that people can actually connect from one place to another without having to do a huge detour.
Definitely huge detour. You arrive to that place which is next to the highway, but you are not able to exit because there is no exit at all. So you have to continue 30 miles to come back again to that certain village, let's say, or certain settlement, definitely. So those type of corridors. But how many of them? Or on what basis will you decide? Let's say on a distance of 100 kilometers, how many of them are needed? How could you approach this problem? Someone will ask you, okay, I understand, but how many of those bypass, I mean those crosses, yeah, or corridors or bridges for animals, or let's say corridors for exiting transport is needed? How will you decide? What will you consider?
I guess I would do studies, strategic, yes, just to see where people go the most.
Yes, strategical study is needed, strategical study, environmental impact assessment is needed.
Yeah. Even strategic environmental impact.
Even strategical impact assessment, that is a starting point.
Before the...
But I mean, it does also go opposite for corridors, human corridors, opposite to the false solution that was giving us before, which is building overpasses and underpasses is just not useful.
But yes, but he was mentioning that in urban setting, now we are speaking about regional development and highway development and rural areas, and also trying to protect the landscape and as well as the habitats, and not to have this barrier effect and separation. So definitely you have to involve biologists, ecologists who are studying those areas, and they have information and knowledge about biodiversity over there. Okay, wonderful, I agree.
Okay, we can continue.
Yes, please.
So let's go to the second block where we propose the demand management, especially on the field of urban transport, I mean transport demand management. Here I would mention, or I would emphasize two main tools or policies, like the parking, introduction or control of parking spaces, parking policies, parking fees, and the other is the other fees, user fees, road charges. So here, these are a little bit more traffic engineering issues, like parking management, parking control, but this is an important tool and an important opportunity for the urban transport management or influencing of habits influencing of decision making regarding transport. This is a current question now during pandemic issues in European cities, how to manage the parking or how to manage the urban transport demands by individual transport. So the main tools or directions like time restriction, control of parking times, reduction of parking times, reduction of surface parking places, so the common surface parking places, and of course positive elements or positive effects are the support of public transport and increase of parking fees, increase of fees regarding parking.
Wait. If we could stop here. You were not attending, obviously, because you just arrived now. You didn't attend András presentation.
As already mentioned.
And Philomena, no. Philomena was already saying, as well as Mohammed to a certain extent, that András, what was mentioning as bad statements, actually Mohammed was mentioning that there is no huge difference between bad statements and proposed solutions to certain problems. Mm-hmm. For example, if I'm not mistaken, András was mentioning if we increase the prices of parking, then this will even worsen the situation. Mm-hmm. And also Philomena was also mentioning somehow, not criticizing the standpoint of András, but asking, what could be the solution to solve the problem? And now you are also speaking right now about restrictions and restrictive policies or
time restrictions, space restrictions.
Okay, but my question is to you, to Philomena, to others as well, maybe to others, to Mohammed as well. Why don't we try to deal with this demand management? Free society, free market. I'm not stupid enough, just I'm playing my role. Why don't we say, okay, we don't have any restrictions. By the way, the Hungarian government stupidly introduced free parking, which means that he doesn't care about the demands, and everyone will do whatever he or she would like to do. Free parking, and we will see what is happening. So why, not because we are facing the problem that we are not capable to manage, but why at all to manage? Why not to say we are not able to, we are not managing, and let life driving us to certain direction, and we will see what will happen. So guys, what is your position? Mohammed, Philomena, Eden, what is your position?
Shortly or strongly.
Do you understand my point of view here?
Smiling.
I don't.
I like what
someone else would talk, but I guess I can go first. So, yes. Well, you mentioned the example in Hungary where they made free parking and how that impacted people's behavior. So whenever you want to change a policy, you need to think about the psychological impact of that policy, how people will perceive it. Not what you think the policy will do, but how people will perceive it. And clearly, whoever made the policy in Hungary to make parking free did not consider how people will interact with this new policy, or just didn't really care. They may even have benefited from increased car use. So
yes, you agree. But my question is, can we live on this way? Can we deal with this issue on this way? And I understand, I agree, who was introducing this policy was not taking care of the impacts or was stupid enough and didn't want to listen what could be the impact. Philomena and then Elena.
I think when it comes to those kind of things, predicting is kind of hard, and you need to experiment to know what works and what doesn't. So it's I think it's easy a lot of time saying regulations are bad, and maybe there should have been a smarter assessment of an analysis of what would happen. But when you ask people, you know, free parking, we all said that would have been a good idea. We didn't think, I guess, the next 4 or 5 steps. So yeah, and I was thinking about the carbon tax in France that sparked the Yellow Jacket kind of protests. And that was a tax on carbon. So if you have a car and you're buying fuel, you're paying a tax on fuel that's superior. But that means that people which is good for the environment, and that's what French people were asking for. But that meant that it wasn't the polluter, I guess the initial polluter that was paying. It was people that needed car to go to work. It was people in construction. It was people from low incomes. And so that wasn't thought through either. And it sparked this huge protest in France as well. So, yeah.
By the way, one day we could maybe discuss with you, and you could have also a presentation about it. I mean, was that really related to that carbon dioxide tax, or there were some other elements because they were angry to the government? Some previous situation was encouraging them to demonstrate, and this was just a sparkling, you know, just the additional boom and flame took place. What do you think?
Yes, as I said, it just sparked the protest, but there was a lot more underlying, huge iceberg under there. So yes.
Yes. Elena, what do you think? Do we need management of these type of things, or only the life could show us and experience?
I think we need to, of course, because as your professor mentioned, like why, if we just live in this free, liberal society, why can we just go? I don't know, but like freedom and democracy in democratic society, it just doesn't mean anarchy. So we need to separate these things. We can just live in the freedoms, like in free society, and to set the limits to everything, to political process, to this, I don't know, products consumptions, to the usage of the roads. So we cannot just let things go. And just because we already see the consequences of free market, of liberal market, when just we can, like technologies, they allowed us to use a lot of resources unlimited in an unlimited way, and now we just came to this ecological problems. So we cannot just simply let things go in this direction. We need to set limits to everything.
Thank you very much making this distinction. You are right. I love very much what you were saying. I am not for anarchy, but I could also imagine or say that maybe the space is limited, and that is the boundary, boundary. But I again agree that smart governance means also, or smart governing or smart government means also trying to predict, which is very difficult, like Philomena was mentioning. And I am not ready to jump to the next topic, but I am mentioning that in Sweden, in Stockholm, where they introduced the congestion fees. Now I'm not speaking anymore about parking, but about the congestion fee. They had that introduction of congestion fee system for 1.5 to 2 years. And after 2 years, already on the very beginning, they told to the people, they communicated, we will now introduce this new policy, new method, but after 2 years, we will have public referendum about it.
Trial period.
So trial period, we gain the experiences, we listen to you public, we listen to the stakeholders, we cannot predict in advance what will happen, but after the trial period, we will have a public referendum about it.
Yes, it was successful.
And actually it was successful public referendum, and if I'm not mistaken, they continued.
50,
but that is right.
57% supported
the congestion fee. So anyway, predicting is very difficult, but much better if we are trying to manage somehow than to just throw and say, you guys do whatever you are able to do it. So what is happening now, for example, in Budapest or in bigger cities, the chaos in transportation because there is no that fee, which was to certain extent only decreasing the transportation driver per kilometer daily. But now that is chaos completely. Okay, Peter, you have a couple of minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. 2 minutes for the next element. This is the road passing, as Zoltán mentioned already. This is other very important and even more promising solution or promising method regarding the management and also the PPP, so the polluter pays principle, so the paying more or less as partly the external cost. Control, reduction of congestion, peak time loads paying, so payment of peak time loads, and in the background, of course, it's necessary a cost-benefit analysis at the introduction of such measures. So there are different policies, different solutions. Here we mention it only strongly. One is the congestion reduction, as Zoltán mentioned, Stockholm and London introduced before, in the 10-15 years before. Other direction is the air pollution control direction in Milan and some German cities. This is not a real road toll or urban road charge, what we see in German cities, but there is a certain regulation depending on the technical parameters of the cars. And the third example is in Oslo and some other Norwegian cities, Trondheim, the income generation practically paying road toll at the crossing of the city border, and this income will be feedback to urban developments.
Okay.
So this is the first.
Let me turn to those who are from United States or lived there, like Philomena or Eden. Julie, you are also from that part of the world, if I am not mistaken. What do you think? András was proposing, I believe, more sophisticated way of revenue collection. Please remember that he was not a supporter of these congestion fees, which have boundaries, and then he was mentioning London. Peter is also mentioning income generation, air pollution reduction, congestion reduction related to the congestion fees. And I don't have doubts that is not happening. I believe this is true. But András was mentioning more sophisticated, that even you are paying for the parking if your car is sitting somewhere. You are paying after each kilometer, depending are you on highway or on jammed road or whatever. What do you think? In United States, there is a road toll, generally speaking, all around. Is it feasible to introduce such fees, congestion, or András' proposal, or that is out of question?
I think it would be interesting to try. The thing about the United States, though, is that people have to drive a car. It's a necessity. That's their only means of transport. So if they don't use their car, what are they going to use? And so those people that, everybody has a car, even the poorest people. So how are they going to do? So I don't think it's feasible. I don't think it's acceptable.
Wait, Philomena. If I will tell you 1 cent per kilometer, 1 single cent, not a dime, not a dollar, 1 cent.
I mean, yeah, sure. I don't know. It would be interesting to try.
Okay, Julie?
I'm actually from the Philippines, from Southeast Asia. Okay. But I'm also gonna share because in the Philippines, road people people resort to private car ownership just because the public transportation is so shitty, and at the same time, it it encourages more pollution in a way because well of the car ownership. At the same time, the road toll does it also discourage people from buying cars, even though the price are high, and well, comparing to taking the public transport. What I'm saying is that even though the price of having private ownership is very high, people would resort to it.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much. Eden, are you with us?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify. Are you talking about like tolls on the road?
No, I am mentioning that in United States, in your respected country, you have the toll system. So already people are paying. I was mistaken that Julie is from United States, but she was nice and saying if you have to pay additional fee like toll, for example, doesn't matter is that in United States or in Philippines, maybe you are not going to that direction or you are trying to bypass that road if it is possible. If not, then maybe you are using, let's say, public transport to avoid paying. So what is here at the stake? Paying. And that is why I was asking you who lived or you are from that respective country, because then later on I will turn to Mohammed as well as to Elena, who are not from United States, saying, okay, is that only in United States that people will be not ready to pay? And Philomena was elaborating on that very nicely and very carefully, saying, I mean, that is a question, how much will be, you know, the fee, because that is a necessity of the people. In case of András' proposal, we have a fee which is not counted at the boundary, let's say, of the urban settings, not when you enter to Chicago, but wherever you pay. And then Philomena was saying that is good, interesting, try in case of United States or in some places in United States, but she had strong doubts. But then I turned to her and was saying, and if that is one single penny, you know, and not more, then what will be the situation? So that is why I'm turning to you.
Right. I wanted to add that I already pay tolls. Like, so for example, if I'm to drive into the city of Chicago, I, like on I-90, on the main tollway, I'll pay, I'm not sure how much it is, but there is a certain amount that I pay. And I have like a little tracker on my car so that it kind of rings me up as I pass.
And automatically that is decreasing from...
yeah, and it will automatically charge my credit card. Yeah.
Yes. Mohammed, what is your position?
I think, well, we looked at exactly how much people would be willing to pay in a class called environmental economics that was done last year at the department. And well, it depends on your income as an individual and where you live, and also what the project is. So it can vary. And there have been a lot of experiments done where researchers try to find out exactly what is the threshold, what's the maximum we can get people to pay without getting too many to opt out of the system. But no matter how much you raise, it will be quite difficult to really have the funds needed. And personally, I think that all of this is not enough. I think we need to look at how we produce cars, possibly just stop producing cars in general and work with what we have. The production of cars is such a superfluous activity, and the amount of emissions that the production of one car causes is just it's
enormous,
disgusting in a way. Yeah, and I don't think we can continue doing this. We will get to a point where we simply can't afford to make cars, and we will be forced to stop, and at that point it will be quite a chaotic situation. So we need to avoid getting to that stage. And as long as we do produce cars, I think we'll continue making the situation much worse, even if they're electric cars.
Okay, very interesting ideas I share, but I don't want to go to this direction. I would like to go to that direction what Eden, and I like very much what Eden was mentioning to us. Even she was saying she doesn't know how much she pays. So that is automatically by her included into the traveling, you know, because the amount, I believe, what they are charging to her account, that is not enormous, that is acceptable for her. Again, I'm trying to say there are two factors. One, if that is not a very high charge, that is why I was telling to Philomena 1 cent per kilometer. If that is not a high charge, maybe they will accept even not knowing how much is it. But the second, what was Iran's example related to subsidies, that you have to bring back that money to the local society. So you have to communicate with Chicago, with people over there saying that we will charge you per kilometer this one, but don't be angry to us because we will spend that money on infrastructure development or greening a city or whatsoever, or for kindergartens or whatsoever. So that is what I would like to mention here. By the way, Mohammed, you speak from my heart. I understand what you are saying, but that brings us to different direction. Philomena, are you ready to speak, or just you would like to have a comment? Then I turn to Eden and Elena.
Yeah, because I did have one like price that I know of, because I used to go to school in Pennsylvania, and I know the trip all the way there was, I think, $30 in tolls alone. And that was an 8-hour drive. So
Wow.
that kind of puts it into perspective.
Yes, so please don't misunderstand. I was not criticizing you that you are negligent and you don't know and you don't care. No, not at all. I was just using your example, and that is why I loved what you told us. Because I used your example saying that if that is not a high price, then maybe acceptance is bigger. Because in András' case, again, I am re-emphasizing, they are paying for everything all the time. Even if the car is not used. I have my car in front of my apartment building or 2 blocks further from my apartment building, but that is standing there for 7 days, 4 times 7 weeks, 365 days. I never move it. Still, I have to pay for it. But maybe this will bring us to the situation what Mohammed is speaking about. Mohammed is not dreaming about, but speaking that finally I will consider. I can go to University of CEU in Budapest within, let's say, 15 minutes by walking, 10 minutes by public transportation. If I have to go to Vienna, I rent out the car for those days. So why should I have a car which is sitting there uselessly, was produced, and I'm paying 365 days, even cents per, let's say, hour, because my car is sitting there. So this is the discussion about what I'm trying to conduct here. Philomena, are you ready?
Yes. Well, once again, I think what you're talking about is maybe possible in European countries or in dense cities. But when we're talking about the United States, that's just strictly impossible in the sense that they're so spread out. Not all. I mean, you know, Chicago and some cities have great public transport, Portland. But the thing is, it's so spread out, it's even hard for urban planners that are trying to make a transition towards a more environmentally friendly city to consider alternatives, because they don't even know where to start. They don't even know how to make a city that was built for cars different. And I think that's a huge problem for the whole of the United States.
Very important comment, Philomena. Excellent, excellent. That is the reason why I turn to you, to those who have some knowledge or they are citizens like Eden of United States. Elena, but what is the situation with Russia? or China in that case, according to your knowledge or experience? And then I turn to Mohammed. I don't know is Vasundhara here or not, but first Elena.
Yes, so actually, like, the situation in Russia is slightly the same. I just mentioned that on a previous lecture, that country is big and everything is so distant from everything, like not only from one city to another city, because like you need to, I don't know, to go for 6 days train trip just to cross distance from my hometown to Moscow. So just 6 days by train, and it's probably like 10 days by just driving a car, and just the distance between cities. But I'm talking not about only distance between cities. I'm just talking also about the distance within one city. That's so, like, everything is also so distant from everything, and citizens, they need to drive a car. For example, my family, I'm only one child, and I have mom and dad, and like both of them, they have car. So like our family, we own 2 cars, because it's just impossible to use public transport, because public transport is so undeveloped. Because city, again, although I'm just living not in just such a big city, so population is small, like relatively small, but still the city's area is big, and you need to cross the city with using a car. But that's just about Russia, so I don't think it's possible now. Probably in Moscow, yes. It just okay. It's just saying that Russia, we have like 2 countries, like Russia and Moscow. Moscow is just actually a country in a country, because they probably they can start doing something like similar with these examples of this road pricing, but not like the other Russia.
I see.
And,
okay.
Yeah.
Very
and
important.
about China, like a Chinese, China actually has a system of paying roads. So you need to pay like everywhere. And it's so well developed, although China is also a big country. It's just, yes, like the 3rd country by the size on the globe. But they, I don't know, they just, Chinese, they tend to listen to government, and they just really good at controlling. So government is really, it's like highly centralized government, and they just put a lot of restrictions of this transport on these roads, and they charge money. You need to be, you will be charged. That's just impossible, not just to cross country with riding like unpaid roads. So they are doing great, but probably it's just because like the population is big, and like this benefits from this road pricing is also huge.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you very much about experiences, and you are right. Moscow is different. I mean, that is a country within the country. Mohammed?
Sorry, I had my hand up, but I actually just forgot to take it down from earlier.
Okay, Philomena?
She also took it.
No, okay, wonderful. So Peter.
Our time running out, but here are two examples or case studies. You mentioned China also. This is one Chinese case study on the first row, and the second is on the Oslo tolling system. And in the previous examples from the Stockholm case, you can also find case studies. This org is a very useful and a very good site regarding urban and suburban transport projects in Europe, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we have a break now?
I think we should have a 5 minutes break here,
okay.
And then the last 10 minutes. 5 minutes break and last 10 minutes. Okay, thank you. And thank you very much for an interesting discussion.
Yes, it's really. Jó. Csak egy rövid szünetet tartottunk,
Igen,
hogy folytassuk.
Dear colleagues,
Can we continue?
Yes, we should continue, and I very highly appreciate really your involvement and cooperation, and I loved your comments, all of them. And to tell you the truth, I was not ready to have a break because that was very lively. But now after a couple of minutes, the last 10 minutes, and instead of 7:10, we will leave at 7 o'clock. So Peter, please have your last block within 10 minutes, and then we will have short questions and comments. I keep quiet.
Yeah. In the last block, I would like to mention the issues of freight transport, management or payment of external costs of freight transport. This is a long conflict and long story, at least on European level, regarding the impacts of transit, the freight transit. And as we heard, you will speak about it next week based on the Swiss experiences. These are the impacts, shortly summarizing again, environmental impacts, first of all, on the side of freight, transit, freight transport. This is the intensity on European level, development of GDP and development of freight transport, plus the efficiency or intensity of the freight issues. The three directions of management, which is more or less characteristic on other fields or other fields of environmental management, reduction of demand, as we discussed before, demand management, move to environmental sound solutions, environmental sound modes, and the technical solutions, technical directions, reduction of emissions on the field of freight. This is the background again, which is, I suppose, who is studying environmental management or environmental issues. This is well known, the EMS, the environmental management systems, audit schemes on European level and on non-European level. This is also important. The targeting the industry, targeting the background of transport companies. These are the traditional environmental objectives on the field of freight transport, like quantification of environmental impacts and the environmental provisions regarding including regulation, including technical measures, technical opportunities. The three directions, as we mentioned before, one is the reduction of transport volumes, transport flows, still a current question. The second is the moving or move from to environmental friendly modes of transport, rail, waterway, combined transport. And the third is, as we already mentioned, also the reduction of environmental impacts based on technical, technological, and other design solutions, measurements. Here I put a short case study or calculation of the road charges, introduction of road charges, or increase of existing road charges on the field of freight transport. Three elements or three questions. It's based on a institution investigation from Delft. Introduction or additional introduction of a...
What is Delft Institute?
Delft. This is a Dutch consultancy institute on the field of transport. So the introduction of an additional 0.15 euro per kilometer charge you mentioned before the 1 cent per kilometer. This is 1.15 euro kilometer charge. And what are the impacts? So the first element is the sensitivity investigation. It was completed by this institution. The result is a price elasticity of minus 0.9. So these are the consequences actually of a price additional road price or road charge introduction. The second element is the reduction of vehicle kilometer to the direction of a more efficient road transport operation system. So the effects or overview of the effects of an introduction of this additional road charge. And the third element is the sensitivity or sensitivity investigation. Is the final result is the introduction of a road charge is not severely affected the incomes, the final incomes. So this is more or less a win-win solution. The reduction of the emission or energy use, and the more or less the situation of the incomes or the revenues will be on the current level or on the same level. So these three directions are opportunities for the reduction of demand, of freight transport demand, as we mentioned before. And these are still existing and current, the external costs of freight transport, of road freight, components of the existing external costs, including billion euro figures. As you see, the biggest part is still infrastructure, so the road construction, consequences at the road construction or road reconstruction, congestion fees or congestion costs, plus others like accidents, still is a significant element, climate change, air pollution and others. And here is the covering of external costs. Still, this is also a tough calculation that a big part, more than 2/3 of these external costs are not covered, more or less 100 billion euro per year, which is, of course, could be a strong amount or not a strong amount, but this is the case that these external costs are not covered. And so this is the conclusion regarding the freight transport management, and some studies or some links regarding this issue. Generally, these three elements that I wanted to mention, and also.
Okay. Thank you
very much.
Peter, thank you. Wait.
We have 2 minutes for discussion.
No, wait. Are there any question? Is there any question or comment to the pricing of freight transport and to this case study, which is showing that definitely increased fees will decrease to a certain extent impacts of freight transport? I mean, how could we imagine that? I will not get my laptop, what I ordered, within 24 hours, but that will be delivered within a week, or how could we see that? or instead of bringing to me by airplane, they will just use transportation, different transportation mode, and that will just on inland waterway travel longer to me. And then the fuel consumption will be lower because by Danube, from let's say from Germany, this laptop which arrived from China by airplane, from Germany will arrive to me within a week or so, because inland transport way, the Danube will be used, which is per ton kilometers is the most efficient one, less consumption and less pollution and less need, because not only my one laptop will come, but maybe 40,000 of them to this region where you have a hub, and then they will distribute. So what do you think? Or Peter, am I right? I'm turning to you as well.
Yeah.
So instead of traveling to me, transporting to me by truck, that will come by boat. In that case, less, pollution, less fuel consumption, and then who cares that that didn't arrive within 24 hours, but within a week?
I'm curious about the EMAS scheme and how much, how many freight companies are participating in it. So how effective is this voluntary scheme?
I could answer to you almost everyone, because this is completely useless to a certain extent. Forgive me, I am cynical in this moment, but I never saw any company which was not using for greenwashing. And not only EMAS, but all these. This is a very good scheme, and these similar type of schemes. Sorry, I'm cynical in this moment. This is not my nature, but I openly tell to you because I saw this was excellent, and these ISO 14001 and all those other elements, EMAS, are excellent for consultancy firms. So if I would like to create a job for my master students, including yourself, doesn't matter that you are coming from different department, I will just increase, I will say in the law, every company has to have this EMAS or ISO 14 certificate. And every certificate should be checked by the other and validate after every 3 years. With that one, I will create enormous workplaces for intellectuals like ourselves, to work on these environmental issues. But I never saw enforcement of any type which was coming out having these EMAS or these systems in place. I am not saying this is bad. I am just telling to you that almost every company is ready to have that. Peter, what is your experience?
I think we are thinking always on different ways, as so-called alternative ways. So the main question is the structure of production schemes, production systems, and plus the distribution systems. And we always emphasize, or we always would prefer the local structures or local production systems, local production schemes, not ordering this laptop from Taipei or Beijing.
But what do you think? Those haulier companies who are dealing with the freight, they will have these EMAS and ISO 14000 certificates?
Yeah, of course.
But you see, Mohammed, that could be good to show to authorities, to different other stakeholders, as well as to competitors that we do have. And we try to keep in our practices all those environmental as well as different other requirements. Is there any other question or comment? If not, I feel tired, but I also see on your faces tiredness and also smiles. So I wish you nice evening. I love your smartness and also your comments and ideas. I learned from you as well. Excellent. I enjoyed very much being with all of you today. Thank you very much for contribution. And on Tuesday, we will have Mr. Balmer, who is a former departmental chief of the Ministry of Transportation in Switzerland. Yeah. Unfortunately, how I told to you, could have been very nice to visit him in Switzerland and to stay there for a couple of days and have a hands-on experiences, but this time that is not possible. So we will have him online. Tomorrow, Esther and Krista will develop a Zoom link with him, because then if that is working, we will send you a Zoom link for next week. Next week we will be on Zoom, not on Teams, but on Zoom. Esther, as a teaching assistant, will send to you all those. Yeah. Please let me know in meantime if you need me for any discussion, then I am at your disposal. Have a nice evening. Take care. Have a rest.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.